Concerning new CDC report on the first severe human case of bird flu in the U.S. Samples taken from a patient in Louisiana show mutations that could make it easier for this virus to spread from person to person. Now, right now, there's no evidence it's been passed along to anyone else, and the CDC says risk to the public remains low. But experts warn a single mutation like this could potentially lead to another pandemic.
Welcome everyone to the Hurting Humanity channel. You heard that correctly. A virus like the bird flu, which is a flu for birds, could potentially lead to the next pandemic. And I've covered this numerous times over the last couple of years with the bird flu, but there's more stuff that has come out in the last 24 hours that everybody out there needs to hear about, because this is absolutely comical at this point. But people out there are tweeting, they're posting all over the internet that they will not comply. And the people who are going to release a bird flu magic potion for humans know, for the most part, the majority of civilians will not go and get an actual shot for a bird flu. However, they also know that there are a lot of people who are still walking around wearing masks who will go and will put this inside of their body. And that is obviously still very important to them. So I'm going to play for you a couple of clips, and I want you to listen to some of the nonsense that is circulating. Some of these same health experts that we saw on television, who are actors, not doctors, year after year, month after month, while we were all locked down, while a lot of us lost our jobs, they're back on television, the same familiar faces. And they're saying that they want the Biden administration to, at the very least, release something before Donald Trump comes into power. Of course, playing into the conservative right, pretending like Donald Trump is anti-magic potion when Donald Trump is the one responsible for Operation Warp Speed. And they're doing this to play into the liberal audience, who is getting more and more fearful by the day of a flu for birds. And some of the words and some of the things you're going to hear include how we need to get testing back in place. So you might remember why it was really important for them to test you the last time, even though some people would test positive and they'd say they had no symptoms whatsoever, and still we walked among oblivious people, where you didn't need to have symptoms to have the actual virus. Some of the things that we heard were just proof 100% that we're living in the dumbest time period in human history, that you don't have to have any symptoms of a virus, you don't have to be sick at all to have the virus and to need to lock yourself down for 14 days. So they want people to start taking a test for the bird flu, specifically people who work on farms around birds, around cows. And of course, this will spread to people who own chickens, who own cows, because that's really what this is about. It's about getting CRISPR into the food supply chain, not just the food supply chain like Purdue, the local food supply chain. So they're telling people that they need to get a test for the bird flu on top of that. And it's on top of them telling you that we should have learned our lesson from the last time, that this time everybody better comply and get in line, at the very least go test themselves. They talk about one of the funniest two things I've heard in a long time. They're starting to use their Tavistock, which is their Sinclair Broadcasting Group, is using this term, reassortment. So they're calling it reassortment, the mutation and reassortment. The reassortment is where things change because one illness becoming another illness through reassortment of a mutated virus. That's the quote. Reassortment, where things change because of one illness becoming another illness through reassortment of a mutated virus. And people out there listen to this, and then they become fearful instead of saying, are they just making it up as they go? Well, they've told us along the way that they make it up as they go. Remember, they specifically told us at the World Economic Forum that they own the science. It belongs to them because it's make-believe, and they make it up as they go.
You know, we partnered with Google, for example. If you Google climate change, you will, at the top of your search, you will get all kinds of UN resources. We started this partnership when we were shocked to see that when we Googled climate change, we were getting incredibly distorted information right at the top. So we're becoming much more proactive. We own the science, and we think that the world, should know it. And we own the science, and we think that the world, should know it. And we own the science.
So I'm going to play for you these clips and listen closely to what they say about reassortment and mutation. The real mutation that's going on right now is the mutation of the brain, of course. It is a brain psychosis mutation that we're seeing. And by that, I mean people are literally in a psychosis. You see it around you. People comment all the time on my channel, and they say things along the lines whenever these topics come up of, even though they have family members who didn't go and get the potion, everybody's behavior has changed. That people are nervous when they're at a store and somebody coughs, no matter if they're potioned or not. And that is exactly what this was to do. In addition to that, what have we seen since then? More and more people dependent on technology. Older generations of people who would never in the million years Zoom call, they're actually now preferring to spend their Christmas solstice or their birthdays away from their family members and do it over a Zoom call. And of course, that was all done by design as well. Here are two news clips where they're literally talking about animal flu and human flu mutating. And it's called something that they're now referring to as reassortment. In addition to that, they're begging the Biden administration to release and approve something. So even if it isn't the safest thing in the world, just something so people could go get in their body. Because, of course, if you get a bird flu, I mean, I couldn't imagine the damage of a combination of bird flu and human flu. You might actually have a couple boogers running out your nose. So you might as well get that old graphene oxide, inside your body. Here is what they're airing on national news, CNN propaganda, as well as CBS. And the faces, while hideous, may look familiar.
So we have rising flu cases. And now we have still zoonotic events coming. So now you've set up for potentially a farm worker getting H5N1, also getting the current flu strain, and reassorting in that individual. To me, that's almost a bigger threat to these mutations happening in individuals over time.
When you say reassorting in that person, what does that mean?
Okay, so the H5 virus, which doesn't adapt too well to our upper respiratory tract and is preventing us from getting infected, but it's infecting cows and pigs and cats and dogs. So our flu, which has the binding sites for us, for our nasal passages. Viruses are very specific, and so they're very animal or human specific. Now we have human flu circulating. At the same time, we have this zoonotic flu circulating.
And the zoonotic is for our
the
viewers
H5,
again,
the bird flu, yes.
Okay.
So we have the animal flu, let's call it the animal flu, and now we have human flu co-circulating. And at any time, someone could get both of those unknowingly.
Bird flu. Is this report out of Louisiana worrisome? And if so, why?
Well, it's one more sign that the drumbeat of bird flu coming closer to humans is becoming a major threat. So we've already seen this year that there have been a number of mammalian species close to humans that now have bird flu outbreaks. We have outbreaks in poultry in all 50 states. 16 states have outbreaks in cattle. In California, in the last 30 days, there have been more than 300 herds that tested positive. And now we have 66 cases of bird flu in humans. And this is almost certainly a significant undercount because we have not been doing nearly enough testing, so we really don't know the extent of bird flu that's out there in humans. But this particular case, it's someone who is severely ill, but not only that, researchers have isolated the virus in this individual who is sick in Louisiana, and they found that this particular strain of the virus appears to have acquired mutations that make it more likely to bind to airway receptors. Bird flu has been around for a long time.
About 30 years.
Yeah, exactly. But it hasn't been a major issue in humans because while it spreads among birds, it hasn't really spread among mammals. But now there is this mutation. And there's another concern now, major too, which is that we're in flu season. And it's possible that a single person could have bird flu and seasonal flu at the same time.
Something called reassortment.
That's right.
Where things change because of one illness becoming another illness through reassortment of a mutated virus.
That's right. And so the viruses could exchange genes. You could develop a new hybrid virus. And if you now have a virus that's more contagious and causes more severe disease, that's when it becomes a major threat to humankind.
What should be happening in the Biden administration right now that isn't going on?
Yeah, there are two main things that they should be doing in the days that they have left. The first is to get testing out there. I feel like we should have learned our lesson from COVID that just because we aren't testing, it doesn't mean that the virus isn't there. It just means that we aren't looking for it. We should be having rapid tests, home tests available to all farm workers, to their families, for the clinicians taking care of them so that we aren't waiting for public labs and CDC labs to tell us what's bird flu or not. And the second very important thing is this is not like the beginning of COVID where we were dealing with a new virus, we didn't have a vaccine. There actually is a vaccine developed already against H5N1. The Biden administration has contracted with manufacturers to make almost 5 million doses of the vaccine. However, they have not asked the FDA to authorize the vaccine. There's research done on it. They could get this authorized now and also get the vaccine out and to farm workers and to vulnerable people. I think that's the right approach because we don't know what the Trump administration is going to be doing around bird flu. If they have people coming in with anti-vaccine stances, could they hold up vaccine authorization? If they don't want to know how much bird flu is out there, could they withhold testing? I mean, that's a possibility. And I think the Biden administration in the remaining days should get testing and vaccines widely available so that at least it empowers state and local health officials and clinicians to do the right thing for their patients.
So these are the same so-called experts who never came back and said anything about the last time that they convinced the audience that listens to them and thinks that they're actual doctors, never came back and apologized because they still play make-believe to their audience that people like us are crazy conspiracy nuts. Even though we said before it happened that it would happen, we said what the goal of it was with nanotech. And then, of course, once it was released, they told you that you could go about your life the way you used to go about it. Then a couple weeks later, they told you you needed one every couple of months. Then they told you it wouldn't even make you immune, right? And still, these people take their experts at their word. In fact, what we're seeing with this psychosis, which is getting worse and worse every single day, really, is that the more people like us exist, the more that we do videos talking about what they're trying to do and pushing against it, it actually makes people who laugh at the notion of conspiracies and the things we're talking, it actually makes them want to go and get it, just to be spiteful. It really does. I mean, I don't even see why they're taking down content anymore about this specific topic. Because the people out there who already went and got it, they're going to go and get it again if they're still alive and kicking, which a lot of them aren't. And the fact that we're already talking about it once again is going to make them want to line up and go get it once again, just to spite people like me and you or prove us wrong is really the psychosis they're in when they actually think that they're proving anyone wrong. One of the other things you may have heard as well, which is funny, is she said something along the lines of airway receptors. And airway receptors are sensory units that help control breathing and defend the lungs. They're found throughout the respiratory tract from the nose to the bronchi, okay? That's important to note because you know what else can really affect airway receptors? Radiation exposure. That's right, radiation exposure. Now, what I constantly try to tell people out there is, would you want to be exposed to radiation? They say, well, of course I wouldn't want to be exposed to radiation. You know, when you go to the dentist's office, or if you go and get an x-ray, maybe you broke a bone, a hip, a leg, you need to get a scan. You know, they put that huge, heavy thing on you. Let's just use the dentist, for example, right? They want to see if you got a cavity, right? You go for your cleaning. And they lay that massive thing that's like 20 pounds across your body. That's to prevent radiation exposure. You see, and the majority of people who go to the dentist, they're not refusing to have that thing laid on them because they say, well, it's dangerous. I don't want to get radiation exposure. But the problem is that these people don't hear the news telling them about the radiation exposure they're getting on a day in and day out basis from their cell phones, from their smart televisions, from the smart meters they're putting on their home, and of course those gigantic towers that the government was so nervous at first that you might notice that they tried to disguise them as trees. You know, those giant 5G towers that are out there? Yeah, you see, that can also cause significant problems to your airway receptors. It's radiation exposure. It has very bad effects on the respiratory system. Of course, these things all happen to go up, as crazy as it sounds, around the time period everybody started getting locked down. So if you could correlate where I'm coming from, well, I think you kind of understand, right? Think about that. Now, the problem again with the 5G is that what they tell us is that, well, 5G does use radio frequency. It's electromagnetic energy, and it is a form of radiation. However, nothing has been proven yet that you can get sick from 5G, as if they're ever going to come out and say, you know what? We found out you can get sick from this. We're now going to remove our trillions of dollars of towers that we can use to manipulate the weather, as well as send radiation to you and eventually control you through once you have certain technology inside of your body. When you're hooked up to the Internet of Bodies, we're going to need these towers in place, right? So they don't want to tell you that because they're never going to remove them. So why would they ever admit to it? But they also don't play completely dumb because they do admit that it's a form of radiation. But like I've said a trillion times, the common human being in the year 2024 going into 2025 will not believe it unless they see it with their own eyes. Well, the problem is that the majority of these people don't see anything with their own eyes. They see it through blurred vision. And the only eyes that they have are actually Big Brother's all-seeing eye, because all the stuff they believe comes from the media. So they're not using their own eyes to see things actually happening in the world. They're looking at their phone, they're looking at their television. And obviously, when they look at these towers, they don't see yellow or red or pink or green beams coming out of it. Thus, it makes it almost impossible for them to believe it. But it is true. And they don't hide the fact that 5G uses radio frequency, that it is a form of radiation. What they hide is the dangers of it, because they're never going to admit it. They're never going to admit that it causes cancer. They're never going to admit that it's killing people's immune systems. They're never going to admit anything that the real goal is with it. They just tell you because they know the majority of people are dumb enough that these towers are so that you can download your Backstreet Boys song faster than you used to be able to. You can get that new Taylor Swift Demonic Spew downloaded 10 seconds faster than before. But the truth is that nobody notices download speeds being any faster at all. They don't notice anything. So as they continue to push with the bird flu, we'll see if they actually come out and release one where, of course, this isn't going to be a mandatory thing. So anybody out there that's hearing the alt-right media telling you that they're going to try to lock us down, that they're going to try to do this stuff, this is different. What they will do is they will get the same people who went and got it last time to go and get it again, which is what they need them to continually take this inside their bodies to hook them up. So they'll go. They'll be convinced if they get scared enough to go. This is really about getting regulation in place so that they could put CRISPR in the food supply chain of local farms. That's what it's about. They want to gene edit your chickens, my chickens, your local farmers' chickens and eggs. Why? Because it's transferable through CRISPR. So in other words, they can stick it in the Purdue chicken, and you could say, I'm not going to get the Purdue chicken. It's garbage chicken. It's GMO chicken. It's not even real. I'm going to get it from my local farmer or from my own backyard. But once they get laws in place and they continue the propaganda with this, they're going to show up at your door like they did for Peanut the squirrel. And they're going to tell you that if you want to keep your chickens, they have to have this inside of their body because they're a health risk to everybody around them. You can't sit there and say, well, it's my property, I'm going to keep it. They're going to say it's a health risk to others. It can spread through the air to your next door neighbor's dog or to your next door neighbor's wife. And then you're going to say, well, I don't want to do it. And they're going to say, well, we're going to euthanize your chickens then. It's one or the other. And thus they'll have it completely in the food supply chain, which is what the goal is, to get this inside of our food, inside of us, however they possibly can. And it's funny that, you know, when you think about all this stuff, they're talking about the bird flu test, right? In those clips that I played. Did anybody out there know you could go and buy a bird flu test? I mean, this shows you how ridiculous this is. We're talking about a flu. You can't even get a flu test for humans, can you? Right? It's called what? A thermometer? You got a cold, you take your temperature to see how high if you got a fever or not. Is that what we would call it for a human flu? Because I never went and saw that there were swabs to stick up your butt crack or down your throat or up your nose between your blood-brain barrier to find out if you had the flu or not. Usually their temperature would tell you if you had the flu or not, right? Feel real hot, put a cold compress on, okay? But now, this is how far we've gone. There are actual bird flu tests that people themselves can take. And how convenient that the bird flu test the human can take also happens to come in the form of a swab that you can stick up your nose. You can't make it up. And I say you can't make it up, not because of how much they push and how desperate they are to do this. The fact that society as a whole has become so politicized that, if it's your political party, you're on board with what they say, right? Everybody forgives and forgets Donald Trump with Operation Warp Speed. And then the other side lives in such a psychosis that literally if you sneeze out in public, these people will stare at you like you just, punch somebody in the throat. I mean, that's how afraid they are of getting a runny nose or a cold, thus also believing in germ theory, which is another topic for another day. But they want people, at the very least, to learn from the last time. And if they're not going to release the shots for everybody and they're not going to willingly get it, at the very least, could you get the nano in you with your swab, is what they're saying? Could you go to your CVS and get a bird flu swab for you as a human being to take and shove up your nose? I mean, really, you cannot make this stuff up. We'll continue to monitor it. The key word to remember that you're going to hear quietly over however long this continues to go on for a couple of years is CRISPR, CRISPR, CRISPR. Because while most people are staring and looking for them to say, all the humans better go to their pharmacy and better go get one for free, they're really thinking more in terms of the food supply and getting it in the food supply. They want full control. I thank everybody for being here. I hope you're all doing well. God bless you and your families, as always.